And it's recording. So, good afternoon. My name is Rodrigo Heusler. I'm the technical account manager of Ingram Micro. And today, well, the idea and the presentation on the webinar, it's a little bit different of what we actually normally do. Normally, what I do is I normally present a solution directly, or all the capabilities and all that it's meant to do, right? But in this case, it's more like a training. So basically, this is a training, like on the invitation said, focus on pre-sales or implementation guys. Basically, the engineer who is actually presenting and making demos of the solution, right? So let's get started over here. Just give me a second. Please tell me if you can see my screen now. Let me know, please. I'm actually gonna bring the chat and the questions to the other monitor for me to see. So we're recording. Okay. So I can see, you can see basically. Okay, let's get started then. The objectives over here are a little bit different, like I was mentioning you. The first, it's going to be a small intro, what we need to actually to make this work, an intro to Zero Trust and how to introduce Duo, and then the demos directly, how to do a demo on different topics directly, depending on who is attending the meeting, right? So the idea is, like I was telling you, is an introduction for you to be able to present the solution and make a demo on your own with your own clients, right? So let's get started over here. What do we need to proceed? Basically, it's not much, but it's required that you are familiar with the tool you are presenting, in this case with Cisco Duo, that you have the information available, that you have received some kind of training on the solution and all the capabilities that you can actually complete with the tool. It's a very important part, at least to present once internally or to someone, to have some feedback of what you are actually presenting, if it's okay, or if there are some points that you need to change, right? Um, Before I start, I should mention that English is my third language, so bear with me. I get a little bit choppy sometimes, um, but please stay with me. Second one, be familiar with the concept of Zero Trust. For all the guys on security that have been over here since a while, then Zero Trust is not new. It's something that we always have the notion of, but now it's more popular, right? So basically, just to be aware of it and be able to present it as well. Why this is important? Because Zero Trust is a perfect platform to introduce the solution of Cisco Duo. It's a very easy way to establish a connection between the two, as well as to continue um, the upgrade of security that your client may actually need in some moment. So it's not just selling the Cisco Duo solution. You can actually expand it to other solutions in the future, probably. So this is why it's a good concept to introduce over here. What you actually need to be able to work, you will need a Cisco ID. We will be using the dCloud demo for the administration portal. And as well, you may have to check if you have access to demoduo.com. This is actually should not require any access, but if it does require it, it's the same Cisco ID that will grant you the access, right? The results of what we are searching directly is to finally establish a POC or a proof of concept. It is established, and basically statistically, if you are able to establish a proof of concept, 7 out of 10 times you will actually be able to sell the solution. Obviously, it will depend if the solution actually complies with everything that your client requires, right? But it's way easier, believe me, if you establish a proof of concept. So this is what you actually need, and this is what we're trying to get. So basically, at the end of the demo, if everything went according to plan, you will be granted or access to establish a proof of concept on the environment of the client, right? Any questions until there? Does everyone have a Cisco ID and actually has some experience with the tool? With, in this case, with Cisco DUO. Okay, I read over here some yes. Seems yes. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm gonna start, and the first part will be why zero trust. Like I was mentioned, another thing that I should mention over here, I'll be sharing this presentation. This presentation has lots of parts of what you could actually present on the for example on the zero trust, on the Duo tool and everything. I'll be jumping most of the slides. The idea, like I was mentioning you, is how do you present it, not the content directly, right? So I'm not gonna be focusing on what actually Duo can do or cannot do. What I'm actually trying to focus is how to get you the message as well as to how to present the demonstration directly on the labs and on the environment of demo. So that's the idea of the session, right? So why zero trust? The first thing that you could explain is how everything has changed, right? So you will have this is basically the same presentation that most of the Cisco Solutions of security use for the cloud environment. Um, and this is the evolving of the perimeter, right? So there has been a shift on the IT landscape as user devices and cloud move outside of the traditional network. Um, we have different problems that arises with them, right? So we will have remote users, contractors, third party. We have more and more personal and mobile devices. We have Internet of Things. We have cloud as a service, hybrid cloud infrastructure, and many other applications that are not currently located inside the perimeter, right? Um, then obviously that generates different challenges. You could ask, for example, these types of questions. How do you know what the users are and who the users are actually joining your network and who they say they are? How do you validate that? How can you view all the connections to all the clouds that you have? How do you check if you have a compromised accesses or what do you say this passwords, for example? How do you say if you have compromised passwords or users directly inside the network? In most of the cases, if you don't have a tool directly for doing that, you will have an issue, right? And this is built basically on excessive trust, because on the original basis, everything that was inside the perimeter was trusted, and now that everything is outside the perimeter, it's still being behaved like it's a trusted device, right? So one of the easiest examples is right now that you go into your houses for COVID, right? Um, the issue came that everyone connected inside the house network, the normal internet, and they will be sharing all the network with different type of devices. The son's laptop, the computer, you could see Internet of Things devices and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, it will grant you gaps of visibility, and it will expose the main network or the enterprise network if one of those devices is actually compromised, right? So basically, this is what you can explain on the IT challenges that you have. How do you have visibility? What user is actually connecting into, I don't know, Office 365, who is actually downloading the files. Does he have the permissions necessary to access, or should he be downloading those files? Those are valid questions that at the moment most of the enterprise cannot answer directly, right? So this is where the security challenges come in. And you can over here talk about a little bit about the increase of breaches involving weak passwords, for example. It's a huge issue, and it's one of the main issues that the security IT guys have, is how do you detect if someone has actually been stolen of the passwords and the user? Because basically, if they have the password, how do you register that, right? So that's some issue, right? So we have, for example, security tools being blind to privacy and encryption methods. If you have an encryption method at home, they will not be able to manage or see the applications or anything that the computer is actually doing, right? We have vulnerabilities and exploits from the app and from different applications and web exploits as well. So you can all mention everything of this, but the idea is that you establish why zero trust is actually necessary. So then you will jump into what is zero trust directly. Zero trust, in small words, is not the lack of trust. It's not the same. Zero trust is more like the principle of zero trust is the least trust, and what that goes in parallel with least privilege. So basically, in other words, do we trust the authentication, the identity that the use permissions is authorizing, given the context and the conditions of the request? The idea is that you will be subject to analysis of every request that you are actually making, and they will determine if you need the access to be able to work in this case, or to have that application, or to have that connection, or whatever you are trying to log in, for you to be able to work. And it's very simple. I can put you an example. You will not give or grant an admin level to someone that does not need it. That's the idea. And that's why I told you zero trust is actually not new, but now we have more marketing. It re-rises, so you can actually use it to emphasize some stuff on the security principles. The basic tenet of a zero trust is treat every access attempt as if it originated from an untrusted source. Basically, make an access very specific. And by doing that, by doing the access very specific, the perimeter becomes every login that you are actually trying to make. So that's the idea of zero trust. You can over here use the slides, you can remove them. I don't mind on how do you use the presentation, but the idea is that you are able to present the zero trust concept, and when does it help you? It will help you a little bit further to how to introduce the solution at all, right? So some of the difference of the zero trust approach, you can mention over here, for example, that the attackers are not going to be able to move laterally, even if they actually have or have stolen some credentials, for example, because every application will treat the login or the authentication as an unsecure, an untrusted device, right? You can extend basically the perimeter. You will have a new perimeter in every application, and that will support devices or enterprise that support, for example, bring your own device. That they have cloud application, that they have hybrid environments, and everything else. So you can use as well the slides, and you can over here have more information. So what is actually securing with zero trust is preventing risk and visibility and reduce the attack surface, right? I'm gonna be jumping over here like I was mentioning you, but the idea is that you land into this slide, and this is where you can actually jump everything over here, but and give just a small and brief information of what is zero trust. But the idea is how Cisco approached the zero trust segment, right? So zero trust is basically, like I was mentioning, not a solution at per se. It's just a way of thinking of how to make the authentication more secure, right? So the idea is to divide, we say divide and conquer, but the idea is to divide how a normal environment will actually work. So you will have the workforce, the workloads, and the workplace. This contains different parts, but for example, the workforce is the people and their devices, the workload is the applications, services, and microservices, and the workplace is everything that has to be with the network, with the central network as its own. So we will have endpoints, servers, Internet of Things, devices, industrial control systems, and all that kind of stuff, right? The verification will have to be different in all of the cases. So Cisco does have a solution to protect the three different pillars: the workforce, the workload, and the workplace. But in this case, Cisco Duo is actually focusing, and you have to be clear on that, on the workforce. The idea is to protect the people and their devices, as well as making sure that the people accessing the different applications that you have on your network or on your hybrid network or whatever uh, are actually from the people that are meant to be. That's the idea, right? So you can talk about a little bit over here about the zero trust approach. I will leave these slides for you to actually manage, read them, check them, see if you're willing to present this or not. You can actually delete some slides or add some that you consider. It's okay. But the idea is that you land on the benefits. You can mention policy-based controls. You can mention visibility across environments, automation, or orchestration. And in the end, is where you actually present the solution. So you can make emphasis again. We are defending, in this case, the workplace, which are the users, the devices, and the applications. And over here is Cisco Duo. Over here, what we have in the presentation and what's coming on the presentation is actually capabilities of the solution. Like I was mentioning you, I will not enter into detail of this, but what you can actually do is emphasis again, the perimeter has changed. Basically, it used to be that everything inside the LAN was a trusted device. Now it's not. Then we have untrusted devices on the one. It's not this case anymore. So we have the problems, like I was mentioning you, that everything is on the cloud. You can actually establish a connection to your enterprise networking from the internet, and you have to consider them as untrusted, right? So the method of verification at the point of initial access is insufficient. Every endpoint is owned, so in some cases it's not managed by the enterprise, so that's an issue as well. Um, and you can actually expand over here on the different topics, right? The shift of how the IT has been built. So we have now more user, more devices, more applications, more locations. We don't need a VPN to work. We have multi data cloud centers directly. We have different devices, bring your own devices. We have Internet of Things. Some devices that are not controlled by the enterprise, but still grant access to the enterprise. So for example, I have seen lots of cell phones that actually are capable of sending mails and no issue over there without a VPN, and they still have access and location, even though they are not linked to an Active Directory, they are not linked to anywhere, and normally it's a personal device, right? So you can talk about a little bit over here of this. Again, check the presentation, see what you like, see what you don't like. It's not directly a compromise over here. And the challenges of the IT that will be addressed directly by the solution, in this case, Cisco Duo, is stolen credentials, compromised networks, and unsecure devices, right? So this is what we are actually solving with the solution. You can actually ask some other questions. I like to use this slide just to generate some worry on the client. It's very easy. So for example, how do you check if your devices are up to date when they connect to a network? How do you, so for example, what's the data in the cloud that they're accessing? Who and what is accessing it? And from where, sorry. How can you view all the secure and all the connections? In most of the cases, most of the clients will not have an answer for this. It may be that they could have an answer for one or two, but in most of the cases they will not. And this will generate some expertise of what they are actually of what we are actually trying to protect, right? So as a result, this slide basically will verify, it says that Cisco DUO will verify everything inside and outside the perimeter. It will limit the access of the authorization users and devices, and it will grant only access needed for the user to get their work done. Basically, you can actually time it for the login to expire very easy, or you can actually focus directly on every time request just some type of confirmation that the user is actually still using the access, right? So this is how it works, and this is how we introduce directly the workforce part that I was mentioning, Cisco DUO. You can mention over here that we can actually protect the workplace as well with the SD-WAN access, the workload with Tetration, but we will focus directly on Cisco DUO, right? So over here is as well more of the solution. We will talk about the solution, what it does solve, so establishing trust and user identities, gaining visibility, ensuring the device trustworthiness, enforcing the policies, and enable access to all applications, right? So I will be jumping over here, and you can actually check the slides in the future. I'll be making sure I'll be sending you this with the record of this meeting as well for you to have it. So you will establish, well, this is more of the points of how do we do it, and a little bit more information of the solution at its own, and I'll be jumping over here. And then after you present the whole information of what the solution is actually capable, and this is something that you as a pre-sales have to do, is establish what actually is the client interested in. The idea is not to make a demo, a generic demo for everyone. If you don't see interesting in anything or nothing in particular, that's fine. You can proceed with the generic demo. But if he is very interested on gaining visibility, you will not focus on for example, on making a demo from the user's perspective or the user experience, because he is actually focused on what visibility does he gain with the tool, right? So this is very important. What I have over here is two fast demos. So one, it's for the user directly, so the user use. I will recommend that this demo is actually done for people that are not technical, or if you are actually exposing the solution to a general manager, for example. They are more interested on how this will affect the normal users or the users on their enterprise, right? If it's easy to use, if it's easy to implement, if it's easy to make the logins or actually make the logins, right? This is what it's interesting for them. You can actually mix over here some information directly from your country of what will happen or what it will actually cost if the compromise of a stolen stolen credential meant if they, I don't know, get a specific data of the enterprise, for example, and how that will transfer into money. That's part of the pre-sales job, to have information of who you are actually presenting, right? So this is very important. And this, for this demo, it's basically from the user use. So basically, it's the experience that they will actually receive by using the tool, right? So for that, you can actually go into, you need access to demoduo.com. You will, in most of the cases, you will not be able, you will not need it to log in. So I will jumping into Mozilla over here. Can you please confirm me if you can actually see this? Some cases does not work well. Anyone? Yes? No? No one has tried me? Can you hear me? Now I'm getting scared. I have been talking over here for half hour. Okay. They say yes. Okay. So they say yes. So we will continue. Okay, so what we have here, it's an easy demo. There is no way, and this demo can actually be made by your own commercial. It does not need to be an engineer. It's a very simple experience of how the tool works from the side of the one that is using it, not from the one of the administration that has control and visibility, right? So for example, the first part, I have some points that you should actually touch, which are the Duo push, which is the notification of login. You can actually check the self-remediation, trusted endpoints, Windows login, device health, and Cisco secure endpoint, for example. Those are demonstrations that will guarantee how the solution actually works. Um, so over here, I will start with the Duo push. So I will open it over here. And as you can see, it's a very simple demo. There is no way that you can actually crash the experience. I've tried multiple types, clicking on different sites and everything, but it's bulletproof basically. So the idea is to show the user how they will actually see the login, in this case to an application on Microsoft. So you can actually mention that this is a login, for example, into a cloud application. The process will be actually the same. You will actually use your username, use your password, right? You will sign in, and in this case, this will appear, which is the verifying your identity. You will have a push notification into the cell phone that is registered by your administration, or on a self enrollment. It can actually be done self enrollment as well. But the idea is that you will have one device that is actually verifying your authentication. So over here, you can actually just see the push, how does it appear. You can actually approve, and you will actually log in. You will still have, for example, to make a cross browser. So what does this mean is actually that you will actually trust the device for a period of time. So let's say, and that will depend directly on the configuration that your administration have emphasized on the login, right? So if the administration says it's okay for 24 hours, you can actually make just trust the device for 24 hours, and you will not be required double factor authentication again in until 24 hours, for example. You can actually click yes, and you will successfully log in this case, into Office 365. You will have the different applications and everything, right? But what will happen, for example, if I sign in, and in this case, I have some type of issue. I did not request the login, for example. You can actually deny it. You can mark it as suspicious, And in that case, it would generate a ticket or an incident report into the administration of Cisco DUO. You can actually auto-configure everything or make a policy that if someone reported his login as suspicious, you can actually remove all access to every application that you have. Why? Because that means the credentials are compromised, right? So you can actually do that, right? You can actually go into yes. You could actually see other options. So, for example, you could use a Touch ID. It's the most recommended way. So instead of just requesting a double factor authentication, the idea is that you will need a biometric way to prove that you are actually the person that says who is, right? You could have a security key, do a push notification, text message, phone calls, or you can actually add or delete more devices. That will depend directly on who is administrating your dashboard, right? Over here, I can mark as suspicious. The access was denied. You will not be able to log in, and it tells you to contact your IT support team. So it's a simple demo that will give you the experience of how the solution actually performs for making the double factor authentication. And you can jump over here to different parts. So for example, you could have, let's say, the Windows login. The Windows login is very simple. As well, it will load the computer, how everything looks. You will insert your password. You will sign, and in this case, you will have the dual push, the call me, or the passcode. You can actually generate it if you have different devices. You will select one, send a push. You will send the push, and as well, this is kind of the same that we have on the other side, right? So this is not very complicated. It's actually very easy to do. And one of the other applications that you should actually run on the demo is some type of integration. It's very important to know that the tool is actually be able to work with other type of tools, right? So for example, what I will focus over here in this case is on the secure endpoint or the integration that we have at Cisco with the integration that we could have with the antivirus solution, right? So I will jump over here, and in this case, it's me again on a MacBook trying to log in into a different dashboard, in this case Cisco Umbrella, but this could be Microsoft Office 365, Outlook, whatever application it actually be, right? You log in or try to log in, and in this case, we will have it says the device has been blocked from accessing this application, and it does not give you another option. It says directly to fix this problem, you have to reach out your administration or IT help desk, right? So what's happening over here? At the moment, the user does not know what's actually happening, but they will contact the IT desk or the administrator, right? And I will jump now to the computer of the administrator in this case. So I can jump over here, and in this case, we can see the dashboard or the administration dashboard. You can see actually the reports. You can see that there is one denied a few minutes ago. It was blocked by the secure endpoint. You can expand over here the information, and it actually gives you, as you can see, it does give you all the steps and everything that it has to be done to continue, right? So there is no way to lose it over here. Over here, if you can see, it says endpoint fail, Cisco Secure Endpoint Verification. Endpoint is not trusted because Cisco Secure Endpoint Check fail. So basically what this is saying is that there is an issue on the antivirus side. So since you are the admin, you can actually jump into SecureX in this case and check on AMP for endpoints what's the issue, right? So you can actually jump into computer compromises. You can actually see by host that is detecting the Jeff MacBook Air that we were actually trying to log in. You can check on the information. You can see there is a malicious process over here, which is actually running on the machine. You can see the exploits and everything that is being used, the WebKit, the Safari. So there is an issue over here, right? You can actually expand over here. And once it's solved, once the administration is actually be able to remove the thread or stop the process or whatever it's necessary to do, you can actually mark it as solved. And once it's marked as solved, there should not be any kind of issue to log in again. So you can actually jump back into, we're gonna jump back into Jeff MacBook, right? And over here, I'm gonna just log in again. And in this case, it's actually requesting me for a simulating or a touch ID to verify the identity, right? So you can actually use that, or you can actually use the password. It will depend. So I will jump over here as well. Trusted devices, how long, in this case, it's telling you how long it's a trusted device. 1 hour, again, and then you are able to log in, right? So very easy demo to make. You can actually see it, how it works directly. So that's the idea of the solution, right? I'm gonna jump again over here. You can actually check, for example, the device health application. This is another demo that you should actually make. This is proving, for example, self-remediation. You can actually check over here, login, next, password. Very easy. Again, my recommendation as well is that you run every demo that you have. Check what's important for you or for your client based on the presentation that you actually gave. So basically, if you gave the presentation right, it will lead you to what the client does actually want to see, right? In this case, it's telling you this is self-remediation. It's not letting you access because there is not a firewall that is enabled on the machine. So you will need to actually address the issue. You will actually need to address the issue before be able to log in, right? So now that you turn on, you can refresh the browser, log in again, and you will have the push notification to be able to log in, right? So then you are able to log in. You can have the authentication part as well. And my recommendation as well is for you to actually check everything on the demo, run it, and be familiar with it. Be able to respond, for example, any questions that may arise by giving this demo, right? So until then, is there any questions at all? No questions? No, nothing? Very quiet, guys. Lots of people, very quiet. Okay, there are no questions over here. So this is a fast demo from, like I was mentioning you, from the side of the user. Again, you should be able to make this with a general manager, someone that is not really interested on the implementation side or on the technical side, right? The idea is just for you to prove how the tool works, but then what happens if you are actually giving a demo to a person that is actually technical or the one who is actually going to implement and manage the solution. In this case, we will have to log in into over here into dcloud, and I will show you how. Well, I will jump over here, and the idea is for you to actually present the dashboard, the main panel, how to add applications to protect the interactions that you could have with the user, the policy creation, as well reports. On the report side, and this is very important, there is a report that I suggest that you actually present, which is the single sign-on log, basically. But make sure that before the presentation, check if on the demo is actually loading that information. In some cases, it does not load correctly. So basically, if it does not load and you're aware of it, don't even try it. Right? It seems very bad that during on a demo, something is actually failing on the environment. This is something that I have I have make aware Cisco aware, and they are trying to solve, but as it stands, it has the same issue, right? So just for you to know. So over here, we're gonna jump again into dcloud. In this case, for everyone that does not know how to go into dcloud, it's as simple as going to Google, type dcloud without or grammar issues, right? You go into dcloud, and over here it will appear the login button. You will actually log in with your Cisco ID, and once you're logging the first time, it will appear some information that you have to agree and accept, and after that you are ready to go. This environment has demos for every solution of security as well as Meraki. So this is your best friend to present a Cisco solution. Just be aware of that part. Over here, what you have to do next is to go into catalog, and into catalog you will actually select the instant demo. We have guided demos, instant demos, we have laboratories, we have proof of value, but in this case you will select the instant demo, and on the search button you will search for Duo. And what does appear is two actually Duo demos. The end user experience, which is basically the thing that we just I just show you, and over here is the instant demo directly for the admin, right? So you will have full access to an admin. You will not be granted with admin rights, but you will be able to see everything. So over here you just click on view, and it will load in a minute. So. And since it's loading, I'm gonna drink some water. Okay. So there you are. This is the main dashboard of Duo, and the idea is how to present the solution. The first part that you have to mention, of course, again, and this should be mentioned directly on the presentation as well, is that this is a cloud-based solution. It does not require anything at all to install, more than in some cases agents on the machines that are actually working as a two-factor authentication or cell phones and everything in that case. It's basically an application, right? But this is a cloud-based application. You as well that on the presentation you should actually mention how is it licensed. It's licensed by a subscription-based model. You can associate it over here. I like to always to associate a subscription with a Netflix subscription. It works during what you pay. If you stop paying, it will stop working, right? So simple as that. What you have over here is the main dashboard, and I will focus directly on the visibility that you will gather from the beginning. The amount of users that are actually using bypass to log in, for example, out of date operating system, the endpoints, how everything has been changed, all the authentications that have been made in the last 48 hours. So for example, you have all that type of information, all the granted access, all the denied access. you can actually go a little bit longer and see the authentication log. This is an authentication log of the last 10 attempts, but you can actually jump in directly for a full authentication log. And the idea is just to show what information do we have, right? So from over here, I was mentioning you over here that you should actually jump into users. And one great way to give continuity, continuity, continuidad. I'm sorry. On English, it will be continuity. Yeah, continuity to the presentation. It should be that you are actually jumping into the user part from this side. So you can actually see the logins, you can see the users and everything, but you can actually see the authentications, and nothing will stop you over here to see this denied. So for example, it's out of date, and you can actually jump into the user directly and jump and see what the user has to offer, right? So you can see all the recent activity where he has been logging in. It has a lots of denied access for out of date. So basically this is reported by device health. It says that the basically this part, yeah, this part Chrome is actually not updated, and I'm not allowing it to log in. And you can proceed to make different kind of solutions, right? So for example, mark that the device has to be upgraded or will not be able to log in. You can actually make a bypass and allow him to log in directly from the dashboard, or you can actually disable any access that they have from over here from the dashboard, right? In very few steps, right? You can actually jump into a full user logs, and you can actually see that it will actually apply the filter directly. You will actually be able to see all the logins that he has been making since, in this case, 2 days ago, but you can actually emphasize that you will need the information for last 180 days, for example. And you will have all that information directly. So this is, and with that, just giving continuity, you can actually jump then into how to protect an application. So you can see that the access denied on different type of applications. You can see that we have Exchange 2016 on the OWA, we have Microsoft Azure and everything. And how do you add those applications directly into the dashboard, right? How do you want to protect them? So the idea is that you can actually join the conversation and go into that part and go, for example, into the application. And how do you add them? A very simple way to add them, just go into application, go into protect an application. And in this case, you can actually search for a different application that you want to protect. One of the best cases that you can actually do if they have, for example, a different firewall, not Cisco branded, you can actually show that we have integration with those. For Palo Alto, for example, let's say a Palo Alto, and you have every agent of Palo Alto that will require a second factor authentication. So for example, the SSL VPN, you can actually add a second factor authentication. There are some that are actually second factor authentication and single sign-on supported. This will depend directly on how do you want to proceed. But over here, you will have the easy way to protect it. You will add it, and you have over here all the documentation and everything that is needed. So basically, step by step, even a small video of how do you actually protect and make the configuration needed from each side. And this is very important. It's not only from the side of Cisco DUO. You will have over here, for example, the different pages on the Palo Alto appliance, on the Palo Alto firewall, to how to make this work, right? So you have all that information step by step, and at the end you have a test. You can actually make your test over here, and you can actually have a troubleshooting guide if there is some kind of issue, right? But you will have all that information at the ring of your hand directly for all the applications that we do support. Any questions until there? No? Okay, what type of applications do we support? For that, you can actually check a guide that we have on Cisco DUO that supports over here. We'll have to search it, but there is a guide of all the applications that we support. There are a lot of them. So there are some types of integrations. The easiest way to integrate is when it's cloud to cloud. Because basically it's just API keys that are being shared from the different cloud, from basically, let's say, Duo admin dashboard from, let's say, Office 365 dashboard, right? Um, there are some other applications that will need, for in this case, for example, the Palo Alto, that will need configuration from the side of the Palo Alto as well as from Duo. And there are others that are not developed directly, but Cisco Duo does have an open API that is, if the client does require an authentication that is in-house made, that's how we say it over here. I'm not sure if it applies to your country, but an application, for example, on the banks, is very common that they have their own applications and they're running directly on their servers, right? You can actually integrate it via API with those logins, right? Any other questions until then? No? Okay. So the next part, since now that we have added the application that we want to protect, is what type of policies we can actually create, right? So over here we have groups, and this is a part that you can actually use to create the different policies. So you can actually create different groups and make them active or inactive directly. In this case, I am on a demo login, and as well you will be, so be familiar with it. You will not be able to add different groups. So what I will suggest to show the policies is to actually jump into the main policy, or the global policy, what's called, right? And over here you can actually see some type of information. You can actually trust the devices. For example, if you are going to show any restriction on the operation on the system operating system that is actually running on the machine, you can actually not allow, for example, versions from, let's say, Windows 7 and older, or Mac OS and different type of versions. Maybe you have a fully environment that does not have any type of Mac OS device. So why would you give access to a Mac OS device, for example? This is something that you have to take into account. We have different type of Linuxes, Chrome OS, BlackBerry, Windows Phone. It will depend of the environment directly, right? You can actually, what I'm just, and let's be clear, I'm just actually jumping into everything that you need to show, but make sure that before you give a presentation, check what's this on the information, right? Check what your client wants to see and how do you show it directly. So for example, you can actually force user locations. So for example, if you are not based on let's say, if I'm based on Guatemala, so if you're not based on Guatemala and I only have company over here, no one from outside this country should be actually accessing any of my applications, right? So you can actually jump over here. You can allow the trust endpoint. So in this case, it's the antivirus part, the device health, show restrictions, by policy directing from operating system. You can actually jump over here and just make a brief demonstration of what type of authentications can we actually have, right? This is divided on the type of users. So we have low priority users, elevated users, guest users, prompt and raw. It will depend of what you actually need to make it work, right? Any questions at the moment? We're running kind of out of time, so I'll be jumping again, in this case, into reports. And the idea is that you show again the visibility that you will gain with the authentication as well on different parts. I was mentioning you, and this is very, very similar to the dashboard, right? But over here on the authentication log directly, you will be able to see all the logins that have been happening. You can actually export it into JSON, CSV, and or print it directly into a PDF. You can actually do that. You can actually make some type of search and show that you're interested, for example, in access denied, and it was access denied because it was marked by the user as fraud. That will tell you directly that there is some kind of compromise with their credentials. You can actually apply. It will apply over here, and we have, for example, this user that marked it as fraud a few minutes ago. To do access gateway, you can actually jump, and in this case, I did it wrong. Was to the user, and you can actually revoke all the access because the credentials are compromised, right? In very few steps, you can actually make sure that the attacker or the person that has the credentials is not able to move laterally on your network. You can go back into reports again. I will be showing you a policy impact, for example. The policy impact is how your policies are actually affecting the users and if they are working as they should, for example. And I know that we are against the hour already, so bear with me. We have just 5 minutes more to go. Um, so basically, you can actually show how your policies are being affected, who is the one that are more affected. So for example, most of the block reasons of the policies, in this case, are for, come on, I click where it should not. Most of the reasons are for out of date or platform restricted. That means the policies actually are working how they are intended, right? We're not seeing blocks directly from wrong credentials and stuff like that. It's because the policies that we implemented. You can actually see who is the person that is actually having the most issues. So 17 block authentications, on different applications. You can see all the applications over here that are having issues to log in. And in some cases, you may contact the user directly and ask what's wrong with these logins, right? And the last part is, like I was mentioning you, the single sign-on log. That in this case, for example, it's not showing any results. So that's why I'm telling you, check before you present this part. But the idea is that over here, you will be able to show the single sign-on and link all the applications that you want that the single sign-on actually works. So you can have multiple applications, let's say Office 365, Gmail, I don't know, Dropbox Business, whatever. But if you don't want that the single sign-on actually logs them into one application necessary or one specific application, you can actually do it and check the reports over here of how the users are actually using the access, right? So basically, this is the demo for the admin side. Any questions until there? No? Okay. So there, the I have a question over here that says, how do you license the solution? And yeah, so they're requesting to know how they're licensing the solution and what's the type of licenses that you have. We have three different flavors of license. It will depend of what the client actually needs. It's like I was mentioning you, subscription based. Like this demo and this presentation is actually this webinar was not meant to present the capabilities of the tool more than how to present a demo. So I will be making another one of the tool directly. I had one like 2 weeks ago on English and on Spanish again on of what's the capability of the tool. But if you missed that one, I can send you the video of that one. Yeah. Any other questions? So, okay. So to finish, basically, you should give a small summary, small bullet points, basically, of what you actually have presented, and in the end, the allowance to make the proof of concept on the environment of the client. If the client is interested on the solution, if it sees that the demo can solve some or all of their issues on their network, the idea is that at the end, you should actually request the time to make a POC, a proof of concept. If you are able to do that, in most of the cases, you are going to be able to sell the solution, right? Um, so just be aware that's the main target of a demo is to actually gain access inside the network of your client to actually install and proceed and for him to see how the solution does it work on his own applications and logins, right? So with that said, this is what I had for you today. I hope that you have actually liked it, and thanks again to bear with my English. I know it's not the best one, but I'm trying to improve it every day. So if there is any other questions, I'll be here for a few minutes more. If not, you're free to go. Thanks again for your time, and I will stop recording at this moment.